NightmArt.
Hi, I am Wilson. My friends call me Wilo. I'm a concept artist and illustrator. Welcome to my channel. I like to paint creatures. Do you want to learn how to create monsters and creatures? In this video, I will show you my process and some tips and tricks that will help you in your creature creation.
Today we are going to paint this disgusting monster.
I hope you can learn something by the end. Oh, and I have a surprise at the end, so stay tuned. Let's begin. I did not have a brief for this one. I love to work with briefs. It is easier when things are clear from the start. For this one, I already knew what I wanted. The Maggot-Man is for a video game I want to develop, specifically a survival horror game. Big fan of those. I started with a few loose sketches. For my pieces, I tend to be pretty sure about what I want and about the concept, so I don't do too many thumbnail variations. When there are many things available, people get lost and hesitation sets in. I knew I wanted some kind of maggot-human hybrid, something that was once human, but transformed and evolved into a gross monster. Overall, what I want is pretty straightforward. This is not an illustration, even though I like to push the render a bit. So I chose this handsome little guy here and decided to go forward with it. I liked the antennae at the beginning and even tried to make it green, but that would make it a bit more funny and cute, like a caterpillar, and I was looking for a maggot, a gross creature that feeds on what is left, barely crawling everywhere. So I started to lay down some simple colors, something fleshy and sickly. At this point, it still has the antennae, but I removed it later. I wanted to use some textures, both as a reference and to bash them a bit on top, but I am much more fond of painting all in the end. I left the bottom of his body red, to indicate that he is unnaturally dragging himself on the floor at all times. I started to indicate a bit of light and dark. The top part should be shiny. The lighting should be pretty easy. This is not a scene, so frontal top light will do. I love the concept art in horror games like the Resident Evil remakes or dark fantasy ones like From Software games. They are so miserable and powerful. I took inspiration from some worms. They have big shiny heads and mandibles, and their purpose is only to feed and change. But since his original form was human, it still has some hominid traits, bits, and pieces from his previous life. Literally. I kept the drawing to a minimum since the rendering and lighting will do most of the work. I like to do line work, but since I have little time, this pipeline allows me to save a bit of time. I put the lines on overlay mode, duplicated them a couple of times. I tried to make its eyes more human, give them a wide open, tired look like it's in constant pain. But I went back to that deep, shiny black that some insects have. This is where I thought, well, maybe green will look good. Wrong. It ended up looking like some Christmas decoration, so I ditched that and started to work on smaller details. But when you are painting, drawing, or designing, try not to get lost in details too early on. Things will change. Sometimes it is good to work in grayscale, but I feel I do better just resolving the value part along with color and light, at least for this kind of design. Sometimes grayscale is necessary to solve other problems, like depth or composition, but since there is little of that here, I skipped it. As you render, the line slowly disappears with the overpaint. In some cases, depending on factors like project times and such, you will even see line work from sketches on the final concepts. That is because, depending on the team's skill, Sometimes a 3D artist doesn't need to see every texture or shape in detail, especially for realistic-looking games, since the visual references are something as well known as reality. At this point, the mouth was starting to bother me. It looked kind of funny with those little teeth, like a little goofy idiot, so I will change them later. I will speed up the render a little bit, since it is just repeating the cleaning process. This is the longest and sometimes most extensive part. But for me, it is fun 90% of the time. I started to define individual volumes, all those little fat deposits and divisions. It's important to experiment with soft and hard edges. Ask yourself where some parts change color and why. Being able to explain the why will solve many problems, as I kept slowly defining individual volumes. Maybe a bit more contrast on those crevices. Let's show all the mistakes made apparent in its body by his uncontrolled mutation. I intensify or decrease lights and shadows on certain parts as I go. I ended up erasing the antennae and making its back fat and shiny. I was neglecting the back part a lot. Sometimes I looked at it and did a bit, then went back to the interesting parts. Everyone has neglected parts of art pieces, for most are the feet. I try to add some spikes. I like spiky things. Some worms develop spikes or poisonous hairs, and some are pretty painful. Here I used the same worm texture you see above to try and add some detail. You can overlay the image on top and then do some overpaint. This is not my natural process, but I try it when I can. There are people who are far better than me at doing this, but we are having fun here. I used another texture, a meat texture to be exact, to get some detail out of that bottom part. I overdid it, as you will see, and ended up covering it. But I got something good out of it. That fat strip ended up looking veiny. I had to fix a bit in the center since the texture altered the value. I redefined some values and shapes, creating some bulbous fat deposits with that texture. I finally advanced the back part and cleaned up a bit of that sketchy brushwork. I redesigned that leg. It was just a blob of color. Here is a part where I invested way too much time. The face, I wanted to show that there was still humanity in there. I find it much more horrible when monsters have some human traits left. So I made some overpaint of the face in a different layer. Always be non-destructive, but I did not like the result. It turned out too cartoony, so I went for something simpler, and that was it. More clean and rendering, and define those little wings. Put some simple shadow, as well as the obligatory rim light. Just kidding. Do not overdo it. And done. I told you I had a little surprise at the end, so here it is. I chopped the Maggot-Man into little pieces and gave it life.
Oh my god, it's alive! It's alive!
Well, that was fun, but that is all for now. Every little thing you learn will make you a bit better. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.